Well, good afternoon and welcome to today's TSP2 Bridge Preservation webinar. My name is Pat Connor and I'm the Research Manager and Asset Management Engineer at the Indiana Local Technical Assistance Program, otherwise known as LTAP, and I'll be the moderator for today's panel session. Today's topic in the webinar is Local Agency Bridge Preservation Program. But before I go too much further, I just wanted to give my personal recommendation to the TSP2 program. I know there's a lot of local agencies tuning in here to today's session, and I just want to share how valuable TSP2 has been to me and training me to be able to give that information to the local agencies around Indiana. So here's a look at today's agenda. As you can see, first up, we'll have Travis Kinney. He's with the Oregon Department of Transportation. Travis is the Major Bridge Maintenance Engineer for the Oregon Department of Transportation. Travis is the past chair of the Western Bridge Preservation Partnership and is currently the co-chair of the TSP2 Local Agency Outreach Working Group. He'll be talking about local agency outreach, funding for local preservation projects.
All right, well, thanks for having me. As Pat mentioned, my name is Travis Kinney with the Oregon DOT. Yeah, my official title is that Major Bridge Maintenance Engineer, which I always find comical because there is no minor bridge maintenance engineer in Oregon. Whoever came up with the position well before my time just kind of felt like they needed that extra title. So trying to work my way up towards general or something, but so far I've only made major. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the TSP2 Bridge Preservation Partnership and some of the content that we've developed specifically for local agencies. The TSP2 Bridge Preservation Program and Partnership is really a unique group where you get owners, you get industry, and you get academia all in one room and working together towards solutions to problems. I haven't really been able to find another group where you get that honest and open feedback where you can get so many different people in one room working on a problem and with potential solutions or others that have seen it. We have annual meetings and monthly calls to help collaborate and disseminate information. One of the things that we noticed when we would get together in these large meetings is local agencies tended to be fairly underrepresented. From that, we developed this local agency outreach working group. Locals own about half of the bridge population and are not only encouraged, but actually have a chair or director positions within the partnership. So they're actually voting members. And so as we looked through the spread of those that were attending our meetings, we realized that, we're really not being inclusive enough of those local agencies. So Greg Freeman and I co-chaired this working group, and really the intent was to just help engage, to reach out and spread the message of bridge preservation and how it can help those. So there's about 40 members in this working group, and it's a pretty diverse group. We have a lot of support from LTAP members, academia, industry, FHWA. We have city and county engineers and managers that participate in the group, and then of course DOT members like myself. And again, we're just really looking at trying to engage locals at a higher level. This is a recent snapshot from InfoBridge. It's a online data repository for condition data, and this is just focused on local agency owners. And so again, I mentioned there's about half of the bridge population, and this shows it by age. And so if you look, the green is obviously where we want to be at with a good condition bridge. If you have a bridge that's less than 10 years old, we're doing really pretty good there. The vast majority of them are staying in that good condition. And then as we start trending to that 20, 30, 40-year-old structures, they deteriorate. They get downgraded to a fair condition and eventually to poor. And so a lot of what this presentation will focus on is on asset management plans and how to really focus on keeping the green in green and avoiding that early age deterioration. I love this slide. I can't take credit for it. I didn't come up with the cartoon or find it. I've been involved with the partnership for quite some time, and in bridge preservation and bridge maintenance for a long time. And every time someone says asset management plan, my eyes cross, right? I look at the forest, I look at the trees, and I try and figure out, I go, hold on, now where's the forest again? Like, what do we really mean when we keep saying asset management plan? How does that impact my daily work? Like, where does that fit into that reactive nature that maintenance often becomes? And it's really just talking about a framework. An asset management plan is that plan of how you balance your resources. You have three legs to it. It should be a focus on preservation and preventative maintenance. You're going to need some rehabilitation and some timely replacements. I mean, the intent of preservation isn't that we'll never have to do replacements, but it's about trying to really shift that focus from replacements, which tends to be a focus, especially at the local level, towards more of that distribution of, where does preservation and that preventative maintenance really fit into the picture? Everyone can get behind this goal. The goal is to achieve and sustain the desired state of good repair over the life cycle of assets. And the key is that minimum practical cost. What's that minimum cost to do this? So we'll go through some of that here. The three legs, right? So bridge replacements. These are expensive. When you have limited funding, there's this desire there's not enough funding to get to all of your replacements that you need. It becomes this worst first approach. There's actually an incentive to have the worst bridge on the block, right? So if there's not enough money to replace all the bridges that really should be replaced, there's this tendency to, well, if my bridge is even worse than everybody else's, now it's likely to compete well for getting that limited replacement funding. We call this the worst first approach. So having the worst bridge available is actually can be advantageous for getting that replacement funding, at least with some of the selection programs that are out there. The problem is this is also the most expensive way to manage an inventory, right? We put all of our dollars into just replacing bridges, we're not going to get very far. It's highly disruptive to the traveling public, and it just takes a long time. I know in Oregon, we struggle at times where a bridge needs to be replaced. It's on its way to being replaced. It's a huge drain on maintenance as we're heading towards that replacement, right? It's the potholes, the emergency repairs, the things that you just can't defer anymore. Even with the replacement around the corner, you're going to continue investing in this bridge. So our next tier from bridge replacement is a bridge rehabilitation. These have a place in there. These are when your bridge conditions have deteriorated to the point of needing really some major repairs. These are typically large-scale projects and pretty costly, but they're done on bridges where it's worth keeping, right? The replacement cost is high enough, or the bridge is still serving its purpose. There's a place for investing heavily into keeping that bridge in service. And then you get to bridge preservation, the third leg of the stool, the one that we like to focus on in our partnership. And these are just actions and strategies that prevent or delay the deterioration. So some of them actually do improve the condition slightly, but in general, the idea is just slow down the rate that it gets worse, right? So it's not particularly exciting. One of the struggles we have with bridge preservation is that there's no ribbon cutting after you're done sealing the cracks, right? Those that control the purse strings often like to focus on that. I have a nice shiny new bridge. It's got all modern features. You have a ribbon cutting. It's an exciting ordeal. It's just very expensive. Preservation is that lower cost activities that can really extend the life of it. One of the things I like to focus on is the short-term traffic control. Typically, preservation actions don't require detours and widening structures to get access to the work. There's lots of different components on a bridge that are worth preservation and maintenance. The deck is that highest value item though. It's the one that the public sees most often. It's the one that's exposed to weather, to traffic, gets the most wear and tear. And when it comes time to do work on it, it's really hard to do work on the deck without disrupting traffic. And so I think it's a great example to kind of compare the pros and cons of rehabilitation and preservation. So we'll go through a few slides on that. Rehabilitation. This is kind of what it looks like, right? There's lots of different ways of rehabilitating a bridge deck, but in general, it's pretty invasive. You're going through and you might be grinding off a layer of concrete, probably a lot of patching. You might be pouring back a concrete overlay with some kind of a cure period. When I look through rehabilitation deck rehabs in Oregon, I noticed that 50–60% of the total project cost is actually not going to materials, labor, etc. It's going to just getting you access to that deck. It's setting up hard barriers. It's handling detours. It's a big issue for us, right? Like, I don't know, as a a taxpayer and as a bridge owner, I just hate seeing so much money going to getting us access to the location and not getting actual that bang for your buck of seeing good done with it. And then another part is once these conditions get bad enough to warrant that rehab, we're getting constant phone calls for the maintenance crews to get out there and patch, right? It's something that the public sees. That was an example of rehabilitation. This slide shows what preservation looks like. And I love the contrast between these two, right? Here you have rubble on the bridge deck, long-term traffic control, big disruption. Here we have some maintenance workers with squeegees putting epoxy down. This will seal up the deck. It'll extend the life of the bridge. It is a very low cost application and low impact. This is stuff you can do during short-term traffic control windows and then return the bridge to normal traffic as soon as it cures, as soon as it's done. Good bang for your buck. Almost all the dollars for this work go into actually a product and labor for getting it installed. When we talk about bridge preservation, one of the biggest challenges we have is showing the benefit to it. You know, you can talk about how maintaining and preserving your infrastructure makes sense, and it's easy for folks to understand that concept, but it's really tricky to actually quantify the benefit. You know, life cycle cost analysis and alternatives analysis are gaining a lot of momentum in the bridge world, and preservation has had a real barrier to being able to really quantify, right? If I stop the chlorides from going into that deck, I get the water out of the deck, how much did I extend the life of it? I will tell you that there is a lot of work that's going into this, but for now I like to focus in on, you know, not getting into the exact equations of trying to show exactly the cost benefit of it, but rather go at it from a conceptual way. I find that a car works really good for an analogy. Taking care of your car requires certain things. Similar to sealing up a bridge deck, I need to change the oil in my car. You know, some of us go 3,000 miles and bam, we're in there for an oil change. Some of us go 15,000 miles before we get an oil change. Right? There's a risk reward with some of that, and certainly a deterioration. It's really hard to quantify exactly when your engine's going to blow because you're not changing your oil on a regular basis. But generally, the public will understand that it's a good idea to swing by oil can Henry's and get your oil changed, right? Similarly, washing your car, rotating the tire, doing your transmission service, these are all things that are really hard to quantify exactly the benefit you get out of it, but the concept's easy, right? We understand that if we don't do these things, we're going to end up rebuilding our engine. We're going to have to do body work or repaint it or replace the tires and the transmission, you know, things that are very expensive. We lose our car for a certain amount of time as it's taking place, right? That's that disruption of traffic. And so I really like this car analogy, and it works well for bridges, so trying to communicate just how big of a benefit we can get from doing our proper maintenance. So I keep saying preservation, preservation, preservation. What does it look like? So there's a lot of different examples of preservation, and at the end of this presentation, I'll show you a bunch of different resources where you can get a lot of info on it. But typically, the things that we're talking about are your deck treatments, sealers and thin overlays that'll take care of your deck, keep water from getting down to that rebar and the salts, washing bridges, various components just to keep them clean and in good working order, bridge joint maintenance, so keeping all that the chemicals and salts and water from the deck from dripping down into the substructure components. So just maintaining those joints in good working order, spot painting and painting your steel to keep it from corroding, you know, patching and repairing your concrete, asphalt with membranes. These are, you know, these are that low cost maintenance that falls in the category of preservation. One of the things to look at is what bridges should I be preserving, right? How do I find them? That can be a challenge, and so there's some things to look at. So the photo here is a beautiful historic structure on the Oregon coast. It was built in 1936, and so this is an older structure. It is one that is so large and has so much historical significance to Oregon that we don't intend to ever replace it. One, the funding would be a nightmare to come up with the cost to actually replace a structure of this size. We just don't have it available. But also the historical significance, the communities invested in keeping this bridge around. So if you have no plans to ever replace a structure, that is a really good indication that it is a good candidate to preserve. Aside from just those huge bridges, those high value bridges, there's also your bread and butter bridges in the inventory. And for those ones, what you really want to focus on are the ones that are in this green area of the curves, those bridges that are in good condition. That's where you get the most bang for your buck. You have a bridge that is on its last leg, it is in very poor shape. Trying to seal it, take care of it at that point is probably not going to do much for you, right? Once you get down on that downhill side of the curve, you've already lost your benefit of the preservation, that preventative maintenance. So I like this graph. It shows that there's overlap between the different categories. It's really hard to say that exactly at this point preventative maintenance is no longer effective and you're on to rehabilitation. A lot of judgment has to go into that decision. So if you're looking for bridges in good condition, you already have most of the information at your fingertips. The National Bridge Inspection data is very useful. The NBI data will give you a good, the NBI ratings for your deck, super, and substructure will give you that first indication, right? Is this bridge in good condition or is it in poor condition? It'll kind of help that first level of filtering to find your good candidates. Once you get beyond that, I would really encourage you to look down into that element level data. It's far more useful, especially when you start looking at your deck, for looking at, well, what's causing this to rate well or rate poorly? What are the defects? Is there cracking? Is there spalling? Really getting down into the project level information. But just as a start, look for your NBI data. As you start developing that list of bridges that could be good candidates for preservation, you need to start developing that preservation project. You need to start thinking to yourself, am I going to contract this out or do I have some in-house forces? And I can't conclude it in the presentation today, but I'll show you resources where you can find it. There is a lot of preservation and preventative maintenance activities that are very easy to accomplish, even with crews that have very limited experience. They're just, a lot of the products out there have gotten to the point that they're not as sensitive to that, having high-tech equipment. A lot of this stuff is a paddle mixer and a garbage can for a bucket to mix in, and squeegees. Like there's a lot of benefit that can be done with in-house forces. If you're going to look at contracting work, then preservation activities tend to be kind of on the inexpensive side, and so you need to look at bundling it together, right? Make it enough work that it's of interest to the contractors to bid on, get a good competitive bid. So when you start to put together your package, obviously how you're going to pay for it is a big component of that as well, right? I said these are the lower cost activities, which is true, but still the money has to come from somewhere. Moving ahead for progress, MAP 21 and the FAST Act recognize the benefit of preservations and actually made these eligible for federal funding. The federal funding is available for this work. However, what we find is that a lot of the asset management plans really prioritize that worst first approach. The bridge in that really bad condition gets the hands on that funding. But it is important to know that that is not a federal requirement. The feds are supporting preservation. These are from the federal FHWA Bridge Preservation Guide. It's a tremendous guide. I have a slide on it just a little bit later. A lot of the charts you'll see and that you've seen throughout the presentation are copied directly from that guide, right? And so these are activities that are cyclical maintenance that qualify for federal funding. Just simple actions as far as cleaning and flushing your drains that you can get some real benefit for. And the idea is trying to figure out how do you put that into a project? How do you bundle it in a way that it's something that the contractors would be interested in competing for? And then how do you get it set up in a way that it can compete for funding? Lots and lots of activities. I won't go through all of them, but you have, everything from that joint repair, steel member repair, to electrochemical extraction, cathodic protection, bearing repair. There is a lot of activities that all qualify for this federal funding. List continues to go on. These are some condition-based maintenance activities, spot painting, channel clean, scour repairs. When we were looking through all the activities that qualify for federal funding, and we were saying, well, okay, so who's doing preservation at the local level? How are they funding the work that they're doing? We had a hard time really making that connection understanding exactly what's happening out throughout the country. As most of you are aware, there's a lot of local agencies out there, and they're very diverse. Some of them rival the size of DOTs, and some of them have just a handful of bridges or none at all. And so we wanted to get a survey together to get some information. This just went out recently. We actually got over 500 responses to the survey, which is highly encouraging for us. And from that, we saw that 76% say they are doing some level of preservation. So they're either doing that cleaning, that joint maintenance, they're doing something that is helping to extend the life of their bridges. So that is really encouraging. 3/4 of the population out there that responded to our survey said, yes, we're doing something, right? May not be doing as much as they could or should, but they're doing it to some degree. And so we said, okay, well, where are you getting your funds for this work? And this is where you see, okay, well, 30% are doing some work with federal funding. Those responded, and 41% are getting their hands on state funding. And so you can kind of just compare between this chart and the previous chart and know that, so we're not getting all the funds down to that preservation level that we would like. Some locals are just coming up with funds on their own. So 33% are saying that they have some kind of a local funding mechanism to take care of these smaller scale projects that they see the value in maintaining. This is a breakdown of what percentage of their total budget are they spending on preservation. You can see there's a few handful of ones that are all the way over there in that 90, 100%. Almost all their funding that they have available is going to just maintaining what they have. But not surprisingly, the bulk of the responses said, hey, we are doing some preservation, but it's in a very low percentage, where that 0 to 10% of total funding goes towards this activity. Again, there's 3 legs to that asset management stool. You understand that some funds need to go towards replacement and rehabilitation, but obviously we'd like to see this distribution move a little bit more towards the right, where you see a greater percentage of funds dedicated for that preservation work. What we got from this is that, although federal funding is available for preservation, and state funding is available for preservation, or could be available depending on your state, the selection process, as a whole, tends to still favor that worst first approach. And with support from the FHWA expert task group, we're working on reaching out to some of these local agencies to build the case studies where we can actually get some information on some of those that have really got a system together that's working well for them to help encourage this type of work. And we're going to reach out to some of those that say, hey, look, I've been trying and I just cannot get through that project selection process. I can't get the funds heading in the right direction for it. And hopefully through the results of that case study, we can go ahead and share that information to others on, this is what's successful and this is what's been a struggle. In the Bridge Preservation Guide, there is information on establishing that preservation program. A lot of it has to do with identifying the work that we're going to do, so stuff we've already covered, good candidates for preservation, and then it's achieving your goals. So this is an example of what cyclical maintenance would look like for preservation. There's ranges given here. It's kind of hard to say exactly what bridge needs work at what time, but this is a chart that could show some of that. Once you start establishing the process, the selection process, and implementing the work, there's this trying to measure the benefit. I will say there's a lot of national work going on right now, research and digging through data to help with this piece, that measuring the benefits. But it's important, right? Those that have the hands on the purse strings and the finances, they want to know what's the benefit for this work. And so that's part of that preservation program, is you got to show, look, I've increased the life of this structure by doing this activity. Monitor and reporting. This is one of the very useful cycles where you can show the trends of your bridges going from that good to poor and back upward, right? So the goal is to really slow the rate that things are moving to the right and hopefully catch up on how quickly things actually improve moving to the left. Michigan is a great example of a state that has shown the benefit of preservation. Back in '98, they passed a gas tax and said this is specifically heading towards preservation. This graph shows year along the bottom, and then the number of bridges that are hitting that poor condition, that structurally deficient, on the left. So every year And when this started, there was almost 140 bridges that were falling into that state of disrepair, very poor condition, right? Michigan knew this was unsustainable, so they started this preservation program. And as they continue to increase the funding going into preservation, they show this nice linear line trend downward of how quickly their bridges are falling in that state of disrepair. They're at a point now where 30% of the total bridge program budget goes towards maintaining and preserving their bridges. I mentioned there are a lot of resources that are available to get really down into the weeds. You know, I keep mentioning preservation, all these different activities, what an asset management plan looks like. You're not going to get it all in a 30-minute presentation. But fortunately, FHWA, TC3, TSP2, which is us, the LTAPs, there is a lot of folks out there that really want to get you information on how to implement these plans and do these activities. I would start with the NHI training. There is a lot of courses that are available online. And I think some of them are in person, where you can go through and start seeing a lot more detail on what does bridge maintenance painting look like? How do I address my movable bridges? And the preservation fundamentals. So I'd strongly encourage you to look through these. I believe that we're going to present all these, put these presentations on our website when we're done. And so you can grab these off of here. But if you just Google NHI training, you'll come up with these as well. There is a bridge preservation newsletter that gets sent out. This is just from the May edition. Lots of great content, narratives on what's happening in the world of preservation. There are FHWA pocket guides. These are a really cool guide that were put together. One of the things that we notice is that, you know, at times you'd see a product that was installed in one state that they loved. It worked fantastic, right? They swore by it. And you had another state say, this was the worst stuff ever, I'm never touching it again. And kind of going, well, you know, assuming it's the same product shipped across state lines, what's the deal? And a lot of it came into that there was just really poor installation in one and better installation in another. And so these pocket guides really go after the ability to, in the field, provide that inspection staff the training and understanding, or even the crew installing the work, how to do it successfully, some best practices. And so you can see there's quite a few guides that have already been developed, and I know there's more underway. But it's that installation guidelines. It's very plain language. It goes to a checklist and equipment and tools. They're very comprehensive, put together by some national experts on how to do this work. And it's really just trying to get the most out of your money, right? If you repair a bridge joint that was leaking and you install it poorly, it'll leak from the day one, right? That's not a good bang for your buck. And so this is ways to do it well. Throughout this presentation, I've been copying or stealing items from this bridge preservation guide. I found this to be a very useful tool, great graphics, and something that has some real credibility you can take forward to policymakers and say, hey, look, you know, FHWA is supporting this, and this is how they're doing it. And so I strongly encourage you to download this if you haven't already. AASHTO TC3 is in partnership with TSP2 and also FHWA BPT expert task group. Right, we get so bogged down in our acronyms at times, but anyways, TC3 is generally available to local agencies. I think almost all the states, or at least most of the states, have partnered together so that they have free access to a lot of the content on here, and definitely worth looking into. And then of course there's the TSP2 partnerships. There's 4 regional partnerships across the country. You can see along the banner of all my slides, I have them. There's the West, Midwest, Northeast, Southeast. We do get together nationally at times, but one of the things I would say is they have monthly phone calls where they will go ahead and host a technical topic. Sometimes it's a presentation on how to do an overlay, or a presentation on something that's done. Sometimes it's someone putting forward a question. I've used it quite a few times for saying, I got this weird crack going on in this spot. I have some concerns. Has anyone else seen this? And you can get some direct feedback. And so I would strongly encourage you to think about attending these. They're just remote, 1 hour, and I found them to be very useful and helpful, and then also a good networking option. If you guys don't get anything down from this presentation, at least write down tsp2.org. This is the website where it serves as that clearinghouse for all the information that this partnership puts together. It is free, and I mean 100% free. It is all on there. it's tough to single out the content of real kind of to focus on, but the preservation, the archived video presentations are amazing. And I've heard lots of locals and state owners say the same thing. So every presentation that's been given over all these meetings gets recorded and archived into one of these categories. So you can go in there if you're having trouble with your scour mitigation and click on it, and there'll be a whole link of different presentations you can go into and just watch. They're posted on YouTube and linked to here. And then if you like the content in the presentation, you can see who gave it, and you can also download the actual presentation itself. Very, very, very useful content. There's also through TSP2, there's training offered. Of course, there's the one that we're giving that's an intro to preservation. There's also one that's hosted out of NCPP, where they'll come, I mean, in a non-corona world, but historically they've come and actually give instructor-led training to local agencies and been able to tailor that training to the needs of that particular agency. So with that, I'll go ahead and end my time here, but this is my email address. And again, one more time, plugging that website. It is a free and very valuable resource.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.